All right, good morning, everyone. Let us begin. We left off speaking about last week about how happiness is all about trying to get ourselves into a place where we're able to recognize that it is a spiritual journey, not just one of materialism, that ultimate joy building is the opportunity of recognizing that I am more than just the physical stuff that makes me me. And when I'm able to focus in on those things that help me accomplish my own personal goals, it's in those realms that I find the greatest levels of happiness and joy. We spoke about we quoted the Ramchal, who is Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, a 17th century mystic rabbi from Italy, a very young genius who said that the whole purpose of creation is to connect to God. God is ultimately the greatest good. And the way in which we do that, achieve that greatest good, is through the commandments themselves. That's what the mitzvot are for. So the question is like this is what I want to deal with today, is how can we develop a deep sense of joy and happiness in performing the mitzvot? Okay, so let's go back. The first time God has this deep relationship with anyone in the Bible is Abraham, the father of the Jewish people, right? It says, God says to him, Lech lecha, literally, go for yourself. Rashi tells us that go for yourself means go for your own benefit and good, which means that everything that happened to or was done by Abraham is embedded in the roots of the Jewish people's journey through history. Therefore, God's first words to our patriarch, Abraham, are the paradigm of the relationship, which is he wishes to establish with us good. He wants to go ahead and give us everything that we need to accomplish our greatness. Okay, and therefore, we need to instill within ourselves the awareness that his mitzvot, the God's mitzvot, are specifically designed for our good. So it's a mindset. Do I see the things I do as a Jew as, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming, it's exhausting, it's just so burdensome, I gotta wake up early, I gotta go to synagogue, I gotta give charity, I just gave charity already, I'm done, I'm out, that's an attitude. So the first step to utilizing this idea of having the proper mindset, okay, the mindset is everything that I go through in life is gam zu l'tova. That's it. That's my mindset. My mindset is that everything that happens to me is for the best. And therefore, every mitzvah that I have to do, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how annoying it may be, I do it anyway because it's all for my good. And this idea has been there from the very, very inception of the Jewish people. Whenever you do a mitzvah, you have to express this deep sense of gratitude to God for having given you the mitzvah. If you don't feel gratitude in what you're doing, if you just feel as being burdensome, you're not going to feel any great joy. The mitzvot themselves won't allow you to experience the simcha of doing the mitzvah itself. This is exactly why we make a bracha before we're performing any mitzvah, right? A blessing that is there to express praise to God. It's there to express the fact that that God has sanctified this moment and allowing us to fulfill His commandments, and for having chosen His special people, His special nation, to do these commandments. Reb Chaim Vital, also a very important translator of the Arizal, who wrote down all the Arizal's works. Okay, the Arizal himself did not write down any of his own books. Reb Chaim Vital wrote down everything that the Arizal said. And he says like this. He says that when a person does a mitzvah, he shouldn't view the mitzvah as a burden, right? Let's just get it over with. I got to do it. I got to go to early shachrit because I want to get it over with. But rather, he should imagine himself that this performing of this mitzvah, he would receive billions of dollars. Now, I don't know about you, but I know about me, and that I know when there's a deal on the table and I can make some cha-ching, there's different kind of focus, attention, different kind of, response. and so on and so forth, because we understand as earthly beings that money will bring me some form of happiness. So there's no question about it that when I'm involved in business matters, yeah, I'm all in. But when it comes to other things, I relate to them all too often as a burden. And it's a mistake. Reb Chaim Vital says you got to direct your mind into recognizing that when you're involved in a mitzvah, it can be bigger than the biggest deal you've ever done in your life. Now, I'll say like pro tip. Okay, number one is don't try to do this with everything. You'll blow yourself out. Okay, you'll overwhelm yourself. Pick one mitzvah that you do throughout the week and make that mitzvah the mitzvah that you're going to use to focus your attention on this idea of feeling joy in the mitzvah. Okay, that me doing this mitzvah right now, pump yourself up, you bang your chest, you crash your head against the wall, do what you got to do. Focus on the fact that what you're about to do is going to give you billions of dollars, endless reward. You'll have a whole different experience in performing this mitzvah. By the way, the Ramchal in the Masechet Yesharim, chapter 7, says that if a person ever finds himself in a place where he lacks the inner drive, right, the inner zeal to get up and do things, he says he should do it like this. He says that force yourself to feel it anyway. All right, this is a quote. He says that our external actions have an effect on our inner feelings, which means, I love this idea, and I say it all the time, we have more control over our actions than our emotions. Let that sink in. We have more control over our actions than our emotions, right? And that means that if I allow my actions to dictate my life, my emotions eventually will follow suit. I can't control my emotions. I had an amazing couple here last night. They're going through some shalom bayit issues, and they're good people, intelligent people, both doctors, but they are horrible when it comes to communication. Horrible when it comes to understanding one another. And the reason for this is because they're allowing their emotions to interpret what the other person is saying. And the emotions are clumsy. The emotions are not always a reflection of what is the right course of action, the right way of interpreting the situation. So I had spent like an hour and a half helping them realize how they have to ignore their gut when it comes to each other. They have to give each other the benefit of the doubt so that they could actually build their relationship. But over here, when it comes to us and us trying to feel this connection, trying to find some level of happiness, we have more control over our actions than our emotions. And if we have to utilize that particular hack to allow the emotions to line up with the actions, to force the emotion to line up with what we want, just do it. It's very hard to be depressed if you have a smile on your face. It's very difficult to feel unproductive when you're just sitting, when you're standing tall and your chest is out and you're pacing because you're trying to come up with a solution. It's very hard to allow the emotions that you're feeling to dictate your reality if you are choosing actions that express a different reality. Revolbi, who is a brilliant Musar teacher, says that he asks the question, he says, what is the point of connection between the world of Torah and the world of secularism? It's an important question. Like, where do we go ahead and have these two different worlds meet? So he says that on the outside, it would seem like, there are differences between the belief of God and the lack of belief of God, the observance of the commandments, or the lack of observance of commands. He's like, but that's not what it is. He says like this, he says that the place of divergence is not in what we believe in. The place of divergence is how to enjoy life, right? He says that in the real difference between the secular world and the religious world is that when we say that we are saturated in delight, that we're feeling the sense of joy, okay, that is coming from a place of kedusha, of holiness, right? It's pleasure of that sort that we seek. Of course, we enjoy the pleasure of the world, right? But the secular world looks towards physical pleasures as the goal, and we don't. The goal is not the physical pleasures. The physical pleasures is a means towards achieving spiritual things. And that has to be our attitude when it comes to our Torah, when it comes to our Torah study, comes to our Torah service of God, and so on and so forth. Man is created to derive pleasure from God. This attitude has to accompany us in all of our mitzvot, performance, all of our Torah study, everything we do. The whole function of it isn't just stam for the sake of schar mitzvah, right? It's there because I want to connect to God. The schar mitzvah is just another way for me to get a connection to God. The reward of a mitzvah is another mitzvah. Why? Because ultimately I want this deep relationship with God. There's a famous story that was told over by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who says that, when Jews left the former Soviet Union, a country which outlawed Judaism and Jewish practice, you found that people that came to America and finally had their freedom, the children of those freedom fighters that came to this country completely walked away from their Judaism. And the reason that he says this happened is because in the former Soviet Union, in Yiddish, they would say, "Es ist schwer zu sein ein Yid," that it's very difficult to be a Jew, right? And that attitude expressed itself in a way where these kids are like, I don't want to be living a life of Judaism where it's difficult or I'm struggling to be a Jew. I don't want to live in a world where I'm trying my best, but everything I do is always being hampered because of my Judaism. And therefore, these kids walked away from their Jewish heritage as a result of that. I say this to parents all the time. If you want to go ahead and have your kids be excited about, wearing tefillin or about prayer, then the way in which you do that is by waking up in the morning and dancing before you put on your tefillin. But if you're like, pulling yourself out of bed and you're frustrated, you're groggy, and you put on your tefillin with a sour face, okay? And when your kid asks you, why are you putting on tefillin? And he says, well, you say, well, listen, I have to put on tefillin. Good luck. That kid's never wearing tefillin again, right? The way in which you get your kids to wear tefillin, the way in which you get your kids to do mitzvot is by dancing and singing and rewarding yourselves and them for doing the mitzvah. I get up in the morning and I dance, and I'm excited to go ahead and do these things. When your kids see that you're excited, they see the consistency in everything that you're doing, they're going to be excited too. They're going to want to do exactly the same thing. You want to try this, by the way. I challenge you to try this later. Pick any mitzvah that you want to bring into your kids. Say, I just learned this. I want to do this. It's so exciting. We're doing mitzvah charts. The people that do this, 10 times, are going to get these kinds of rewards, blah, 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 whatever it is. And boom, explosion of new realities and potential happen. But if you come in and saying, oh man, I just learned another mitzvah. I got to give, there's maaser. I got to give tzedakah. I got to get, I'm going to do it because I have to do it, not because I want to do it. Remember, we're having this conversation within the context of simcha, of how do I bring more joy into my life. Most of us are guilty of of being passive players when it comes to the happiness we receive in this world. And I'm saying you have to be proactively trying to bring simcha into your life. How do you do that? Well, having a goal. Do you have a clear destination of what you're trying to achieve? Is there a measurable goal that you could see progress and you going along that way? Mitzvot are a clear way of doing this. The function of mitzvah is for me to get closer to God. I do all these things because ultimately, while yes, I enjoy the physical world, those things are not going to give me happiness. I know that. No matter how much money I make, no matter how big my car is or my house or my vacation, those are counterfeit pleasures. There's nothing real there. The real stuff that is eternal is the stuff that allows me to connect to the divine, the stuff that allows me to become bigger beyond myself, my own wants and my needs. So when we talk about, building the simcha, one way of doing it is by aligning your actions, allowing your emotions to align itself with your actions. And therefore the actions itself will help dictate what kind of emotions you need to express. Now, there's a lot of research that shows that happiness is largely dependent on the three F's. Okay, number one is family, number two is friends, and number three is faith. Family, friends, and faith. Okay, you very hard to have happiness without the accessories necessary to find happiness. Okay, so Maimonides in Moreh Nevuchim says that the Torah encourages showing closeness and kindness to family members, right? Why? Well, because it's too easy to make enemies there. You're in their face every single day. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be in a bad mood. You're going to say something that you're going to regret. They're going to take it emotionally. They're going to get hurt. And you're going to make mistakes there. But when you have harmony in the home, right, and you're able to strengthen those ties in your family, that is one of the objectives of the Torah itself. The Torah wants you to build close-knit families. Okay, and again, it's not going to happen by itself. If you're not steering the ship, you're not going to get there. From the earliest age, a child sees himself as a part of a greater family. This is the way we are, right? And through this, when he matures, he feels a connection to the rest of the Jewish people. Parents should also involve their children in all kinds of spiritual and ethical content that helps them distinguish their particular family as well as the Jewish people in general. You know, when my kids were my two older boys were having their bar mitzvahs, a couple years apart. So I decided that I was going to make a sigil for my family, and I have it over here. This is like our stamp. I'm not going to see it properly, but I'll show it to you another time. That's like our family sigil. We made that with them, right? I'll share like a bigger version of it. This stamps it on all of our books. So what we did was like this. I sat down with my kids and I said, okay, well, what do you think are the family values, right? So we said things like truth. We said things like happiness. We said things like clarity. We said things like justice. So I took all those ideas and I distilled them into images, and we sat down talking about, what legacy we want to leave over. And I took these ideas and I hired a graphic designer to help me take these different concepts and put them into a shield, a sigil for our family. And then we went to we found this lady in Crown Heights who does custom kurachas and tefillin bags. And we sewed it on their tefillin bags. And all my kids, for their bar mitzvah, they get a custom-made leather, kuracha with the sigil on it. And they love talking about it because it's their family, it's their ideals, it's their beliefs, it's their whole, it's their unique mission statement. How are we involving our kids in the mission of what we're trying to accomplish? It can't just be about school and a job, money, marriage, and kids, which is unfortunately where for most people, that's where the conversation begins and ends. That's it. That's what kids are for. Kids are to make more kids. They can make more money and have more upward mobility. That's not the purpose of life. Purpose of life is for us to perfect ourselves, for us to recognize that we are small creatures that are trying to achieve greatness. And we can't do it alone. We need our family. Families that have values are the ones that stick together. The families that have a vision for their future are the ones that build the world. So when we talk about friends, right, it says, Ukneh lecha chaver. That's a Mishnah in Perkei Avot. It says you should acquire a friend for yourself. The Bar Tanura says, why does the pasuk say Kneh lecha chaver? To teach you that even if you have to spend money on a friend, it's worth it to get yourself a good friend. Rabbi Yonah says that the benefit of having a good friend is getting sound advice. That a good friend is able to give you counsel He's able to assist you. He's able to advise you and serve as a confidant. Friendships are important. And we also know there's this idea of, staying away from a bad friend, staying away from a bad neighbor, someone who has an ayin ra, someone has a negative eye, a negative view of the world. Stay away from negative people. We all know negative people. Whatever you can do to get away from those people, get away from those people. You want to focus on one thing and one thing alone. Finding the people that'll help you achieve your unique mission. Everyone else, just get rid of them, cut them out. Bad. Okay, last point over here is emunah. This is from the Chazon Ish. He says, once a person's intellect reaches a clear recognition of the truth of God's existence, at that moment, he is immediately filled with boundless, ecstatic joy. So there's this deep intellectual sense of joy from the recognition of God's existence. When you know that there is a God in the world, you are overwhelmed by this feeling of simcha. Okay, so now that is the highest level of understanding joy. The Rambam says it also, that the greatest simcha is knowledge of God, and I think that's exactly what he's talking about. Now, there are all sorts of obstacles and mistakes that people make that stand in the way of them being happy. And one of them is focusing on not what you're missing, but rather focusing on your gifts. If you want to be besimcha, do not focus on the things that you're missing, but rather focus on all the things that you have, right? Now, how many people do you know say the following? My whole life would improve if I had ... I just need a better ... and then I can relax and be happy, right? My whole life would improve, if I had a new car. I just need a better paying job, and then I could relax and be happy. And then I'll have more time to do all the things that I want to do, right? We focus on all the things that we're missing. How many times could I tell you, Rabbi, if only I could meet the right girl, right guy, then I'll be happy, right? You get the car. What happened, right? For the whole week, you're walking on there, you're so excited. And then you go back to being unhappy. Does that sound familiar? How many people do we know that do that all the time? Happiness is not something that happens from the outside. Happiness is a state of mind. You can have everything in the world and still be miserable, or you can have very little and feel an abundance of joy. This is what we say in Pirkei Avot, Ezehu Ashir Hasameach Bechalko. The wealthy man is the one who appreciates all the things that he have. That's why in the morning we begin with, these special brachot. Thank you, God, for giving me life. Thank you, God, for giving me so I can see. Thank you for my hands and feet. Thank you so that I can think. All these brachot in the morning are there to help me create a grateful mindset. And once you master the art of noticing, appreciating, and conscientiously enjoying what you already have, that is when you'll be happy. Not looking for the outside things. It's so easy. It's an easy fix when the problem is outside of you. This is exactly what happens right there in the beginning of Genesis. When God asks Adam, what happened? Why are you wearing clothing? What did you do? Did you eat from this tree? And obviously God knows he ate from the tree. So he gives Adam a chance to take responsibility. What does he do? He says, me? Isha. She gave to me and I ate, right? It's not me, it was her. And then God asked the Isha, what happened? Me, Nachash, Isiani, the snake, he deceived me. You want to find simcha, you got to take responsibility for your simcha. And the way you do that is by first appreciating all the things that you have, right? Stop pushing, putting the blame on other things around you, that if only I had this external thing, that is when I would be happy. If I only got that external girl, job, that dream vacation, whatever that thing may be, you could put whatever you want and then in between those dots. If only, and it's physical or it's external, you're not going to be happy when you have. You'll be happy for a little bit, but eventually that fades away because that's what we call counterfeit pleasure. It's not real. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi and Sefer Hakuzari says it's a mitzvah to be happy with what we have in life. Mitzvah hasamech bechelko. There's a mitzvah to be happy with the things that we have, right? That is that's exactly what we're here for. Rabbi Chaim Vital also says that that a person has to rejoice in knowing that God only acts in our benefit, that He's there to give you that, and that itself, he says, is the medicine for all depression, right? Depression and sadness comes from the feeling of being stuck, that there's no justice in the world. But if you lived in a world where you recognize that everything that God does and everything that happens is somehow for your benefit, you can't be depressed. Izzy, horrible statistic I just saw. They asked kids 18 to 24, and over the last 12 months since the pandemic, have you had any thoughts of suicide? Ready? 75% of kids between the ages of 18 and 24 said yes. It's insane, right? Why is that happening? Why are kids feeling that there's a huge level of unfortunate suicide around the country right now in teens? Why is it happening? It's happening because kids feel stuck. No future, no vision. Simcha, external things they could have. I can't go to camp. I can't go to school. I can't be with my friends. There's never been a more important time in our history where we need to educate ourselves and our children to recognize that real happiness comes from inner growth, not outer things, right? And that comes from the recognition that everything that happens is somehow for our benefit. Everything that happens is for our benefit. So, when we talk about the world that we live in, are we able to appreciate the world's beauty? Are we able to appreciate the wisdom behind every aspect of creation? And all of those things are part of God's love for us. That the snow and the ice, when the ice covers the sea or a lake, what's happening is that acts as a thermal blanket to make sure that heat does not escape from the water itself, so the water doesn't freeze and kill everything inside of it. That's a chesed. Why does it happen like that, right? But every aspect of the world itself is expressing God's deep love for you, right? That Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz says that when you put on your clothing in the morning, right, don't even take your socks for granted. That you have socks that warm your toes. How many people not too long ago in the Holocaust were walking through concentration camps in the bitter snow and had no socks to wear, right? We take things for granted. I'll end with this idea that a family member once walked into the home of Rabbi Avigdor Miller in New York City, and he was startled to find that this chacham was standing with his head submerged in water in the kitchen sink. So after Rabbi Miller had finished this very bizarre, activity, he was asked to explain what he was doing. So this is what the rabbi said. He says, I was walking outside when a friend of his complained about air pollution in New York City. So he said he was concerned about the negativity, right? That his negativity would put a damper on his own appreciation for the gift of oxygen that he breathes. So as soon as he got home, he dunked his head into water and went without breathing for a long time. And he says, well, now I appreciate breathing. I got that appreciation back right away, even the dirty air in New York City, right? It's so easy to become desensitized from the world around us. You're very easy to go ahead and lose sight of things that are important. I'm going to end with this practical exercise to help you appreciate what you have and increase your happiness. Okay, most people fly through the first 15 minutes, but when you spend time, being grateful for things like your fingers, music, water, friends, and you keep just going through all the things that you're appreciative for. The first 15 minutes are easy. The last 15 minutes are really, really hard. So number one is spend 1 hour writing down everything for which you're grateful for. Okay, an hour is a lot. I challenge you 20 minutes. Okay, number one, 20 minutes Write down everything the first 5 minutes will be easy. The next 15 minutes will be gruesome. Number 2, add one new blessing each day. Okay, right? You got to be conscious of all your existing blessings, all the things that you already have, in order to appreciate a new blessing that comes your way. Therefore, you got to really hone your skills and become an appreciation expert. So the step number 1 is just writing down everything which you're grateful for. Step number 2 is I want you to find a new thing you're grateful for each day. Do this for a week. Number 3 is prioritize your list. Okay. Rewrite your list ordered from which gives you the most pleasure, which gives you the least. Which is more valuable, your hands or your feet, your eyes or your ears, your sense of taste or your sense of touch? Compare each pleasure. Doing that forces you to qualify the subtle aspects of each pleasure and to quantify how much each respective pleasure gives you. Do this for a week, and I promise you, you will increase your joy. God willing, next week, we'll speak a little bit about jealousy, and then we'll finish up the series right before Purim. Wishing you all an amazing week. Thank you for being here. Lots of love. We'll be in touch. Shavua Tov.